Today's episode is powerful and an inspiring conversation you won't want to miss. We're exploring the radical and liberating idea that choosing pleasure in birth is a rebellious act. Why is that? Who are the women making these bold choices, and how can you experience pleasure in your own birthing journey? Hi, I'm Deborah Pascali Bonaro, director and host of the Orgasmic Birth Podcast. Joining me today is Anna Lundqvist. Anna is a former midwife and the founder of Sacred Birth International. She mentors birth workers and educates women on the transformative nature of birth and as birth as a rite of passage through her courses, Sacred Birth Worker Mentorship, Birthwork social platforms, and her own The Natural Birth podcast that I was just a guest on. So you can definitely hear my birth stories by jumping over to her platform, The Natural Birth podcast. If you've ever felt there's more to birth than what we've been taught, we're here to let you in today on all the best kept secrets. Welcome, Anna. It's such a pleasure to have you on our podcast now.
So beautiful to be here and to have the pleasure of talking to you today so much. I loved hearing your birth stories. I encourage everyone to go and listen to those. So much power, so much wisdom. And I am also looking forward to exploring this topic of how even having an idea about wanting to invite a pleasurable birth into your experience, how that truly is a revolutionary, rebellious act in today's over medicalized, kind of pathologized birth culture that we live in, right? And live under very much.
Yes. And I love how you say a rebellious act. Can you talk a bit more about what do you mean by that?
Well, I really mean that. I mean, it is rebellious because we're so few that think differently than the kind of the mainstream dominant birth narrative today, right? We're kind of little unicorns, you and I, who speak. You speak about orgasmic birth. I speak, and give a platform to the sacred and to the natural physiological process of birth, right? And that's very fringe, which is so weird. How can the most natural thing a woman does be fringe, be alternative, be rebellious to speak of as something sacred, something natural, something that, should be experienced as, powerful initiation into motherhood, like showing a woman her power, like your birth stories, like showing you how powerful you were, right? Instead, the dominating kind of narrative is the opposite, is that poor women, let us help you through this very big ordeal and challenging, very dangerous ordeal. Like, let's protect you, let's sedate you, let's medicalize you, and let's, take this burden off you. Truly, just hand yourself over to us, hand yourself and your baby, your pregnancy over to us, and we will make sure you do not, die and that you don't suffer. And what if, what if we imagined the absolute opposite? What if we had a world where everyone was expecting to experience something magical through their rite of passage of birth? What if we expected that some women can actually have an orgasmic birth experience, that can actually feel like their birth was pleasurable? Imagine that world. What a different birth narrative, what a different birth world we would have, how women would approach the birth so differently from how they do today.
Yeah, I so agree with you. And who do you think this is for? Because, I get that a lot. Well, that's for someone else, right? Who can do this? Who can have this rebellious, orgasmic, pleasurable birth?
Well, I believe that women who, because, as a midwife and later as I, deregistered as a birth worker, as a sacred birth worker, I've attended births and I've heard through my podcast women who've actually either say that they didn't experience pain, they classified it more as pressure, who actually experienced a pleasurable sensation close to or even an orgasm as they were bearing down, pushing their babies out. Because, of course, as a baby's head is coming through the birth canal, which is the vaginal canal, which is where also you have a lot of androgenous, well, not erogenous zones, and the cervix itself is an erogenous zone, right? So, of course, that area of your body can experience orgasms just through, as you know, through sexual penetration, or also, of course, outside. But when you're talking about birth, you're talking about the head coming down the birth canal, so it's inside. Of course, you can experience that. Of course, that's possible for you, right? I'm surprised that people think that that is a strange thought. It's like, why would it be? And so when we talk about like the women who experience this, I do think that some do experience it without having had the intention to, without having any prepping of that. But they have the beautiful opportunity to experience that because they have awakened their vagina, their inside of the vagina. They have already in their life experienced orgasm and have activated those parts. But did you know what? And you probably know this, that actually women who've never had orgasm, which a lot of women in our world don't, something happens with childbirth that actually awakens that for women. So after birth, a lot of women will, who haven't before, experience orgasm. I mean, so anyways, we're going back to who this person is. This person is someone, I believe truly most of the time, is someone who's open to that possibility. You have to have a mind that's open to that possibility, that that could be possible for you. And that, I think, means having a real, embodied experience with your body before pregnancy, during pregnancy, be inviting pleasure into your life, that's something that you do, that's something that is a part of your day-to-day life. And that you also are seeking a different kind of birth and handing over your birth to the medical establishment, that you're actively seeking something different. Those are the women, I believe, that have a higher chance of experiencing that kind of pleasurable orgasmic birth.
And I love how you say, awakening this part of our body, especially in a world where so many women are not experiencing orgasm in their life, right? And that we need to do more to awaken those areas. So I have to ask you, because we're getting a lot of stories about women in labor using self-pleasure. And they're finding that one, they've been comfortable usually with self pleasure before the birth and used it as a way to awaken and maybe even achieve orgasm if they're not always having that with a partner. But in birth, they're giving us like, wow, incredible stories. What's your feeling about that as self pleasure as a tool? And are you seeing that at all?
I have seen that as a midwife, yes. And I would say what I'm mostly seeing where most women go to is pleasure together with a partner. So kissing, caressing, massage, being close, being very intimate, right? And that really, really helps. I see that a lot and it really helps. It helps create that bubble of safety, of love, and increasing the oxytocin. I think it can be a tool to use if it comes natural for you. If it comes natural for you, and you definitely need to feel so safe with the ones in your birth space to do that, right? Knowing your midwife, knowing your birth worker, really feeling like you can be naked, you can be free. So if that comes to you, and it's also something that you use, regularly before birth, right? You have that relationship to yourself, then absolutely. What I see mostly is that deep intimacy between partner and woman, and that being really beautiful. And birth worker, I mean, I use sensuality as a birth worker with women, with light touch, right? With caressing face, the hair, acupressure points. I use my voice, deep, low. I use myself, my body, and my nervous system to really bring the feminine and the sensuality and the water element into the birth room. So I think that it can look different in different ways how we bring that element in, not just actually touching yourself or using some sort of, masturbation or that kind of tool.
So
Mm.
beautiful. And I love how you brought that connection to partner, connection to self, and your team, your midwife, your birth team, your doula, right? So, how are other ways that you help prepare people for pleasure in birth or to experience pleasure?
Well, I don't really focus on pleasure with my practice. That is something that if a woman, if that is her intention, then of course that's a part of what we speak of. To me, the focus of preparing for birth is to learn that your mind is the biggest either helper or kind of opposite, right? The one that can really make you not have the birth that you would like or desire. Our minds are so powerful. So, we spoke about this when you told your birth stories on my podcast, that we birth the way we live. And so a big part of what I work with women about is to, during pregnancy, have a practice of like yoga nidra, dropping into relaxation, bringing in pleasure into your everyday life, like really inviting feminine embodiment, which actually feminine embodiment is all about being in your body and being in pleasure. That which awakens the feminine within all of us, men and women, is pleasure. So, like increasing that, naps throughout the day, cuddling, massage, the more we can invite these things into our everyday, the easier we have to access that throughout the labor and birth process. The same with our minds. How will you deal with the intensity of labor? Pain and pleasure so close together. And women, we know this. When we are in the act of lovemaking, something that can be so pleasurable can also be like teetering on painful and the opposite, right? And so this is something we can use in birth and practice, of course, in pregnancy and before that. How can I open even deeper in that moment where I'm like, oh, is it painful? Is it pleasurable? If I choose pleasure, what happens, right? So like working with the mind, exploring how I can, in moments of pain or discomfort, how can I soften into that? How can I allow it? How can I reframe it in my mind? What happens if I, instead of resisting it, allow it and, lean back into it? Because that has been my experience as a birth worker. That's been what brings women into more of a birth experience that she later will feel like that was empowering, that was pleasurable, or that was, fill in the blank, a positive experience, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So beautiful. And I love how you talk about the sacred, right? That you are really in the divine feminine. How do we create that sacred space? What tips do you offer for people that are, pregnant and preparing for birth? I know sometimes I get people like sacred. They're like, what does that mean? Can you share a bit more about your approach?
Well, there's a lot to share there, but
Yes.
I would say if I would boil it down to one thing, it would be that, again, you birth the way you live. And so if you every day see life as sacred, see yourself as sacred, then everything you do, everything you say will have a totally different energy, the way you approach things. And also as you approach your birth, you care, provider, whoever that is, do they treat you as a sacred vessel of life or not, right? Not with words, but with the way they act, right? And so to bring in the sacred into birth, you really have to bring in the sacred to everyday life, the way that you walk, talk, the way you move in the world, the way you relate, the way you eat your food. It is, you can't take one experience like childbirth, separate that from the rest of life. No, it's about just how you approach life, truly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful the way you say that. I agree, right? We have so much to prepare for birth in how we live our life every day. And not that it's devoid of challenge or stress, especially in our current world, right? But how do we navigate that and still have that sacred For me, those pleasure moments, right? All the different ways that we bring it together. Well, I know, coming back to kind of the rebellious too, and I'm sure you receive this a lot. There are a lot of people that want that, rebellious, that want to follow their path, their inner voice, their trust of their body and their baby. But the society is just giving them messages from outside, and even partners sometimes are in their own fear or stress that, how do they navigate that? As a midwife, through your classes, how do you help people navigate so that they can get through all that outside sound to really have their rebellious voice guide them to what they really desire?
Well, I would say that the most important thing is when you truly understand as a pregnant woman that as soon as you get pregnant, the veils between the worlds are thin. You are the most intuitive that you've ever been, but at the same time, you're also so sensitive to all the external stuff as well. And so from day dot, you need to really treat yourself as the sacred vessel that you are and realize how sensitive you are and take empowered action on who you invite into your space, who you're going to listen to, and actually remove yourself from situations and people that you sense this is not good for me and these opinions will not help me. Turn towards the people that had the birth that you desire and only listen to them, or feed yourself with these kind of podcasts and birth stories that you want to experience. Like we've talked about this on my podcast. It's so true though. And when you start, and you have to take radical self-responsibility. So I'm a mirror for that. I can't do anything for you because it's up to you. You are the sovereign woman. It's time to claim that. No one else can claim that for you. I cannot help you have the birth you desire. It's up to you to claim your birth, your pregnancy, your baby, your postpartum, and actively choose how I show up every day. That is your choice. And one of the things that modern women, I feel, generally forget is the power of the mind, and they don't look at that enough. They might go to childbirth education classes and learn about how your body works and the womb works and birth works, but that's not enough. You have to be friends with your mind, find tools for your mind to meet the intensity. What are you going to do? Are you going to meet it as yes, bring it more? I'm going to lean into this. I'm going to trust this. If you want to call it pain or pressure or whatever you want to call it, how will you meet that? That is the question, not how it works, right? That's a part of it, but the biggest is the mind. So how can you have this reverent mindset of like, I'm going to invite the life force energy come through me. It's going to be intense. What do I need for that? And find the tools that works for you, whatever that looks like.
Beautiful. That was so powerful, Anna, because I think so many people listening struggle with that. We have our inner voice, but the outer voices can be quite hard to navigate. So, such good wisdom. So, I have to ask you, for our listeners are here to have that orgasmic birth by their own definition, right? And orgasmic birth is not just orgasm. We honor that some people, planning it or not planning it, birthgasm happens. But for many, it's more, as I shared on your podcast too, for me, it was more about being in my power, having my voice connected to my body and my baby and that. So what would be your tip for someone that wants an orgasmic birth defined by their definition? What are a few steps you would leave us with to kind of claim that?
I would have a pleasure practice daily or weekly, whatever that looks like for you. That could be like long, beautiful baths, putting oil on your skin, having a ritual, preferably daily, where you are very much embodying pleasure. So it's not from your mind, right? This is an embodiment practice. So like, how can you awaken the senses, touch, smell, sound, taste on a regular basis? Because if you can do that daily, you can do that in birth. We birth the way we live. This is key. So you can't just read yourself or listen yourself to that birth. You birth the way you live. So if you don't invite that pleasure every day, or at least, regularly, how will you access that in birth? If you don't sit in meditation and look at your monkey mind, how will you meet your monkey mind in birth? If you don't do relaxation practices daily or regularly, how will you access relaxation in the midst of life force energy coming through you, right? So you birth the way you live. You need to have it as a regular practice for it to be accessible in labor and birth.
Thank you so much. So I know people would love to find you, follow you. Can you share a bit where people can contact you and a bit about what you offer if they'd like to connect with you more?
Oh, absolutely. Well, you can find me on sacredbirthinternational.com. That's my website. And on Instagram, I'm also Sacred Birth International. You can listen to the Natural Birth podcast to feed your mind with natural, empowering birth experience from women from all over the world, birthing in hospitals, birth centers, home birth, and free birth. Really to prime your mind to believe that your body really is made to do this. And I offer also childbirth education courses. I have the natural birth course, which is focused on natural birth and optimizing that, and the nourishing postpartum course to that. And then I educate birth workers or women who want to become birth workers. So in my Sacred Birth Worker mentorship, I have previous midwives, nurses, doctors, as well as maidens who've never birthed and are just like passionate birth nerds. I have mamas who've birthed in all kinds of ways, cesareans to free births, and all who just feel this longing to serve in the birth portal, to hold space for women in the sacred rite of passage of birth, pregnancy, birth, beyond as well. So I offer that once a year, the Sacred Birth Worker Mentorship, it's called. You can find it on sacredbirthinternational.com. And also, I also help birth workers with businesses. So that's also a passion of mine, the business course for birth workers. And the next one is starting on the 29th of September.
What wonderful offerings. So that'll all be in the show notes. So wherever you're listening or watching this podcast, definitely look below at the links so that you can connect with Anna. And we love to hear from you. I hope you'll send us a message. What are you taking away? Share this with friends and colleagues that you know need to hear these messages. And we always appreciate it if you would rate and review our podcast. That helps us reach more people and get positive messages and stories to other people that are preparing for birth. So thank you so much, Anna, for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Oh, and thank you to all our listeners. We're here because of you. So we wish you a pleasurable day and I hope you'll join us next week on the next episode of the Orgasmic Birth Podcast.